Power on. It's alive! It's alive! Hello everyone! Welcome back. So we've given up on numbers, just
the next
segment. So in the last video we made a test cut. We showed you the drag chains that were installed, and I think that was the majority of that one. Since then, I've done what I said I was going to do. We have cleaned the cables and we have installed an actual work surface. So we now have a work surface, a 3/4 inch MDF board, and you'll notice that there's no wires. Well, I kind of had to move the wires to put the board up, but let me give you an idea of what that looks like. So first things first, we have a power plug mounted into the bench so that I can turn the system on and off. And all of our electronics are now mounted onto a nice pretty little board. You can see the AC coming down into our power supply, which then feeds down into the rest of the circuitry, all nice and mounted and pretty. I still plan on adding a door to this, and I'll explain more about my electronics in a future video. You will also notice that the Harbor Freight workbench has been scalped. So we basically have removed all of the drawer mechanisms and turned it into just a basic bench. And I plan on doing some additional work to stiffen it up a little bit. We actually have our wires nice and bundled going into a hole, which will be in a cavity once that door is installed. For now, the board that we're using is just clamped onto the system, but it is sturdy enough that we should be able to go ahead and start doing something more official in regards to some test cuts to help make sure everything truly is as stable as we think we are. I still need to get the emergency stop switch. I have it on longer wires now, so now I can actually cut it off this way, and as you see, that does function correctly. Let's see, reset that. So I do have an emergency stop switch. It's ugly still, and it's set in a normally closed state so that if a wire breaks or even if the power gets turned off, it will actually shut the system down. So while it's kind of ugly having it just dangling like this, if something breaks loose, it actually will shut the machine off. So it's fairly safe while I work on getting it nice and cleaned up. So to give you an idea of sort of what we did with this, I'll go ahead and sort of show you some clips from the drawer removal. So as you see, and I know I said no more voiceover, but hey, in this case it kind of makes a little bit of sense. But on the bench, we basically just sort of reversed the installation procedure for the Harbor Freight bench, just removing the screws. It was basically just the two side plates, the middle plate, that bottom board, and then the drawers just completely came out. So it's actually very little holding those drawers in, and once we did that, all those drawer assemblies were gone. And right now I've got them just kind of stacked up down here. We'll figure out where all this is going to go. I actually had a lot of stuff stored in them, but you just couldn't reach it when it was in that back corner, so it just didn't make sense to have it back there anymore. So I need a toolbox, you know, like one of them nice big toolbox like the Dental Tools is always talking about.
Okay.
I need one of those. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod.
I think you blew your wad.
For the backside, basically I was planning on taking that piece of wood off the end of the workbench and actually carving out a nice little size hole for the switch by itself using this. I planned on taking the board like this on the backside and actually removing it and just cutting a rectangular hole for that switch. But it turns out these screws are placed there, but it's also wood glued. So I would have basically ripped these apart. I pulled all the screws out of the other end and I couldn't get this off because it was glued as well. So I went ahead and just drilled a hole and then pulled out a chisel and tried to chisel it out, which, as you can see here, kind of worked miserably ugly. So if you look at the backside, it's just like one of the ugliest pieces of woodworking you've ever seen in your life. But hey, once in the very end, everything was done, it looked good enough. And My switch is solid, it's not moving, and now I can just physically cut the system on and off. So all of that worked. And the way this thing is also set up, one of the nice things is, as soon as you power it off, it actually loses the reset ability and the system completely shuts off. This is basically just a sheet of 4x8 MDF. I just did a very ugly cut. Yeah, you'll notice that here it's nice and flush, and as we go, it kind of gets a bigger and bigger gap. That's because the way I cut this was freehand with a saw on the, well, here, let me just show you. I'm suddenly feeling less confident about this cut. We're definitely going to have to reevaluate the situation.
This is what he looks like when he's thinking.
The right tool for the job is the one you got.
Oh my God.
Oh, we're getting there now, baby. Luckily, I only need about 2 more inches. That's what she said. I mean, it's not a straight cut, but it's a spoil board. It's going to get just cut up anyway. At this point, the machine is as functional as it's going to get. There is some cleanup. I want to put a board back here, a little door with fans on it to cool off the heat sinks on the driver boards. I want to clean up that emergency safety switch. I may wind up getting a new, that one doesn't mount very well, so I may just order a new emergency stop switch that I can mount into the front face of this, the same way I mounted the other one over there. That way the switch will be right here. But beyond that, she's ready to rock. So it's time to actually start putting it to use. I've got some leftover MDF from this and from cutting the board that the electronics are mounted to. And this is going to wind up being the door. It's going to have hinges on it, so it will actually open up. It'll have air holes at the top, fans at the bottom. But I've got enough leftover stuff. The plan is, starting off, I want to start making some signs. I want to actually start making something functional. So it's going to be the decorative signs, about 8 inches wide, about 2 foot long. Things to say that, you know, that mushy stuff that people like Home Sweet Home, the Canva Classroom.
Could you say that one any less sweet?
Oh, I'm sure if I try, I can say it a lot less sweet. But it would involve throwing in extra words that aren't YouTube friendly.
Home effing home?
Ooh, I like that. Home effing home. I might have to make one of those. But anyway, as I was saying.
E-F-F-I-N-G, right? Home effing home.
So I had a few ideas about which way. I thought about, since I want to do sort of a generic size, I thought about doing it as a template and actually carving out a 2 foot by 7 inch cavity in my spoil board that I could just drop a piece of wood in. It would fit snugly enough that I would feel comfortable that it would wiggle. But I think I've decided I'm going to take some of the extra MDF and actually install basically an L-shaped bracket that you can kind of flop it into, and then something on the back corner to kind of brace it in, and just make a little template for dropping in boards to carve out signs. But like I said, at this point, it's functional enough to go ahead and find out how well it works, so that the final segment of the video will be a review of how we like the system once it's all together. And so stay tuned for that last and final segment when we...
What about the electronic part? I thought you said you were going to do something about that.
Well, I think I'm going to make the electronics a separate video altogether of what I did, because that was a rabbit hole of decisions.
Okay.
Most of them bad.
Okay, so that will be after.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a separate video about all of the electronics. Yeah, mistakes were made. Lots of mistakes were made.
And we're not even talking about the fire, the sparks.
Oh no, we're talking about like the one board that I smoked because I reversed the polarity.
And of course the camera
one board
wasn't
that I smoked because I wasn't paying attention and hooked a AC into a DC. I had the voltage right. I didn't pay attention to the fact that one of them was AC and one was DC. The relay through.
AC/DC?
The relay through, it just never unthrough. It's permanently seized into an on state. It's always on. Now technically that board can still be used for another project because it has 4 output relays. One of them is seized open, well seized shut in the on state, but I could actually use the other ones because I'm not using all of them anyway. But
okay, so
lots of parts were purchased that I never wound up using.
After this video, there should be a review and then
an in-depth electronics video
at some point.
And then we're going to start getting into the software side of things, actually using and all the different ways of making the machine work.
Because we had a request about, are you going to show making stuff? Because the star.
Yes, I am. Wait, someone actually made that request?
Well, they said, I hope you're going to show more making stuff.
Oh yes, that is. The whole point of making it is to start using it. So the next thing we're going to start doing is the actual using it.
And unfortunately, Christmas is past.
Next Christmas is just starting. In fact, the store should be putting next Christmas stuff out in about a week or 2.
So you can go ahead and make my 2022 ornaments?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make your 2022 ornaments now. But yeah, so going forward, this series is basically not going to be the machine itself, but the using of the machine. So the construction is 99% complete for now. So now we're going to start getting into what can I do with it, what can I make, can he make it?
I'm not sure.
Oh yes. In fact, I'm actually like I'm just dying to get in here and start carving something.
Okay, well, I guess I need to get on Canva and create something for you to carve.
Yeah, I was say before all of that though, the next thing is going to be cleaning up all of this because this project has destroyed what little bit of clean organizational stuff I had going on. It's yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I got the one corner nice and clean and ready to go, but the other part was kind of destroyed. So
we're gonna say goodbye.
So stay tuned. Like I said, the next video will show an actual sort of, once we have a chance to use it to actually carve some things out, we'll show some of that and a review of the machine. Followed by that, we'll go into all of the electronics, all the decisions, good and bad, with the electronics that were made, which ones worked out, which ones didn't. And then we're going to start getting into how to use all the software and how to actually make the things that... So it'll be sort of that 2-stage process, seeing the software to create the G-code and the actual cutting of it with the machine. So that's what you'll be seeing going forward. Until those videos come out, we will see you later.